Yo, welcome to another episode of Beats Bourbon. Welcome to another episode of Beats, Bars, and Bourbon, where we delve into two American originals, bourbon and hip hop, where the takes are as well balanced as a good cocktail. And yo, we got a very special guest in the house, man. State's Attorney Ivan Bates. How you doing, sir?
Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you as well, man. Welcome to Beats, Bars, and Bourbon.
Thank you.
And look, before we start, man, something on a personal note. My mother was a big fan of yours. She passed away April 5th of this year. Thank you. She met you a few times up at Cross Keys.
Okay.
Right? And she said, I just love that young man. She was an attorney. She was she worked for Deed. She was an administrative law judge.
All right.
So she felt the connection there. And she really was a big fan of yours, man. How you doing today?
First of all, sorry for your loss. I lost my mom as well, so I know what it's like.
Thank you.
Thank you. But that's very humble to know that your mom knew who I was.
Absolutely.
And respected me. But I'm blessed. Long day, grinding, doing my work, but I'm not complaining.
No doubt. And I mean, that just shows you a man in the community. Like we were talking a little earlier.
Right.
And obviously from the things you do, going out on your walks and everything, like you definitely are a man of the community. But let's level set, your favorite word. Let's level set it. And like, because I kind of feel like a lot of people don't understand the job of a state's attorney.
Okay.
So what exactly, for the people who don't know, what does your job entail as state attorney?
Well, many people view me as the chief law enforcement officer of Baltimore City. And what does that really mean? When you're the chief law enforcement officer, I really believe, and first of all, there's an office of 400 people, about 200 prosecutors in my office, and then there are another 200 support staff. We work the police department and all the other crime-fighting departments and agencies. And when the police put together a case, our office handles it and prosecutes. Our office decides what to do with any and all cases that come in the criminal justice system in Baltimore City, from juvenile to adult, any cases, misdemeanors, felonies, anything like that. We also advocate in terms of post-convictions. That means when individuals have been previously convicted, they want to argue and say their conviction should be overturned. But most of all, I think our job is just be a partner with the people in the community to make sure that we're supporting and protecting the community.
Mm-hmm. Right. So 30 years ago, you were assistant state's attorney in Baltimore.
Not quite 30, not quite. Very close.
It's close.
It's close, though.
But that being said, right? I mean, you have kind of a full circle experience being here that long ago, seeing what Baltimore City was like at that point in time. Like for me, what I'm curious to know is what's different about your time in 2025 compared to quasi 30 years ago?
There's a lot different. When I was a young prosecutor, I looked at things differently. For instance, I started in the district court and Southwest District. And, I felt I really couldn't prosecute in the community unless I knew the community. So I volunteered to be a basketball coach at Rognell Heights. And that was my way of trying to understand the community, see what the community was about and everything. And, from there it was a lot different. I'm leaving Howard University, William and Mary Law School, coming to Baltimore. And it was about the people was a little different. The communities were a little different. Somewhere along the line, you have all of a sudden you have mass incarceration. You just lock up people. And little by little, we began to see, to me, how the communities weren't the same. You definitely had drugs back then, but you didn't have the violence it appeared to be in some ways. You had murders, but they weren't quite as brazen, and it seemed to be only the people in the game that was happening to. And so little by little, you had businesses. Everybody was thriving. When I got here, the Inner Harbor was amazing. I would go down at Inner Harbor, didn't know anybody, and I just walk around, and you could be lonely, but you had lots of people around you. And so now you don't have that. You don't have, like now you see a group of young kids, people are gonna be scared. Back then you see a group of young kids, hey, how you doing? They're gonna part, they're gonna be respectful. You see older people walking down the street, they're gonna be respectful. That level of respect was a lot different than what it is now. And so for me, Baltimore was beautiful. And I still think it's a very, very beautiful city. But also, I moved here to help take care of my aunt. She was 75, lived in an older adult building. And, you know, for me, I got to see what the community was like through her eyes as well.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I like, you know, speaking like needing reform, and from my take and watching all the great things that you're doing, because I do want to applaud you. You are Mr. Data. You are Mr. Bring your toothbrush with you. I absolutely love it.
Thank you, thank you.
And, you know, as we ask these questions, I just wanted to know, like, what are the next steps in reform for juveniles? Because it seems like you got the adults kind of in line right now, bro.
Well, that's a whole other issue. Our juveniles, our kids, we love them to death, but one of the things I'm finding out, we also have to be able to hold them accountable. And I have a 9-year-old little girl. I love my daughter to death. And if I let my daughter have candy and cake and ice cream all day, she would. If I let my daughter stay up until she fell asleep, she would. But there have to be rules. There has to be guidelines. In my house, my baby girl can't have cake and candy after, you know, a certain time. In my house, she got a bedtime.
Set no standards.
And that's what you have to do, have to set standards. But also when she's bad and she messes up, we take things away. We do put her in timeout. We do punish her. And so one of the things I think with juveniles, we have to understand some of these kids have some real serious issues. Some of them don't have parents. Some of them live in absolutely squalor. Some of them are just struggling just to have a meal. So I understand that. I get that. But I also feel like, well, we need to put our arms around these young people and, you know, the school system, what they're doing in the school system, ensure that they're able to go to school, make sure they're able to focus on education, give them all the benefits that any other kid would have.
Sure.
But when the kids are bad, so if the kids, you know, rob and steal and carjacking, we have to hold that young person accountable.
That's what I wanted to hear.
And people are like, oh, you just want to lock up brown and black kids. I don't want to lock up little kids. I don't like that. I don't want to lock up any children. I don't want to lock up anybody. However, you got to remember, my job is I look at the victims, because these kids are robbing brown and black victims. You know, when you talk, we did an event the other day, we had 980 older adults in this room. It was amazing. But when you talk to them, they're terrified to walk out their own house.
Yeah.
They're terrified to sit on their stoop, and they've been living in this city 50, 60 years, paying taxes. So why shouldn't they be allowed to enjoy their house? Why shouldn't they be allowed to walk up and down the street themselves? Why is it? Because I go to church, New Metropolitan Baptist Church here in the city, McCullough, Mosier. We don't do services in the evening anymore because they don't want to come because they're scared.
Yeah.
So to me, we have to change that narrative. Look, we love our kids, but we got to get our kids in check, and they have to understand their rules. Yeah. Because adults, we have the opportunity and right to enjoy our community as well.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And we were talking a little earlier, and I mean, you got, I mean, there's the dichotomy, right? You got a certain amount of the community who respects the criminal element, right? Either they are the criminal element or they respect the criminal element. And then you got this other side over here who we don't talk about, who are the Mr. Johnson who works at the port. Yeah. You know what I mean? Who lives in the community trying to raise his kids and do his thing and get his kids up out of there, right? What side do we fall on? Like we got so much to talk about. Yeah. We got so much to talk about. Look, I won't even touch that because you touched that already. But this is what I wanted to say. Steve and I were talking a little earlier. You got a kid who steals, right? He goes into CVS, steals some food or whatever, right? But he's stealing for joy. You got another kid who goes into CVS and steals, and he's stealing because he doesn't have any food, right? How do you, as a state's attorney, reconcile that kind of situation? What do you think about that? Like, because it's the same crime, but it's two different scenarios.
No, without a doubt. You know, the first thing we have to do, and what people have to always understand, is how the system works. So that child who's stealing, they don't come to see us. They go to DJS, Department of Juvenile Services, and they make a decision what to do with that case. But let's say the kid's stolen $500-600 worth of items. Then we may get that case. First time offense, we're going to try to most likely give that kid some sort of diversion to try to help them to understand what's going on. We want to give them the services, and that's why you have DJS, to give this young person the services so they understand what's going on. But then let's say this kid comes back over and over and over again. You first start instilling CVS. Eventually, you're going to hang out with a crew that's stealing cars. Before you know it, someone in that crew is going to put a gun in your hand, and before you know it, you're going to pull that trigger. Our hope and goal is to stop that young person after they steal the first time. Because, look, I was a criminal defense attorney. I've seen this story over and over and over and over again. And so we don't want to lose our children, but we have to make sure we hold them accountable at the very beginning. That accountability could be something, you take something away from them, or that accountability is some community service. It could be absolutely anything. And sometimes the accountability may be you've stolen from this business, and that parent or guardian now has to sit down and pay whatever it was that business lost. Right. So now that parent or guardian is put on notice, hey, you have to be a parent as well.
Let me ask you this. So when it comes to accountability, especially with like juveniles, it starts with active listening, right? And that's not easy for kids that come from an environment where they've only been presented a lifestyle where nothing's worked out for them, right? To be able to active listen, you got to understand that hope has to be there, first and foremost. Like, I like the word reconcile, right? Because none of us want to come up here and talk as if we're pacifists to individuals that commit crimes. But we do want to be understanding of what's a plague in our community, in the black community in particular. So how do you identify or at least work with juveniles who have challenges with active listening that could be psychological? You know what I mean?
Well, look, we have to really understand we do have issues of mental health within our community. But unfortunately, as black people, we really don't talk about that. We don't want to acknowledge those issues. But it's important to understand that our children do that. I will tell you what, though, if the police stand in front of the children and say something, or a teacher stand in front of the children and say something, they ain't listening. Now, you put Lamar Jackson in front of them, everybody listens. Ain't no active listening issues. But the issue is, what can you do to speak their language? Yes. And so to me, so much of it is, how can we package this lesson so that this child is wanting to understand, to pay attention? If you speaking at people, they ain't never going to get it. Right. You have to speak to, you got to figure out what you need to do to connect to that young person. A lot of times it is sports. A lot of times they see sports as hope. It could be something, especially hip-hop music. It could be whatever. Figure out what it is you need to reach out to talk to that young person. And that's why, one of the things that you also find out, you have within the Department of Correction, you have Secretary Scruggs. She has a program where you have individuals going into the prisons to talk to these young kids who they want to hear from. And those are the individuals that sell them hope each and every single day. I had the opportunity to speak to a college yesterday, and I let them know you got to trust the process of life, because I was you. I was struggling, didn't know what I wanted to do, had no idea. Basically barely graduated from from high school. Graduated from college, had to go in the military to turn my life around. So what did that look like? And so for me, hope is, whether it's you, whether it's me, hope can be anybody, but find that person you look up to, and that's going to be your hope.
Okay. Now, what do you think about the inequities in legislation, right? Like, and I think one of the main thing that people have always historically pointed to is the time you get for powder cocaine versus crack cocaine and stuff like that, stuff that disproportionately affects black people. What do you think? Is that something that is getting better in your opinion in the last 20 years, or is it still the same? Does it need work? What do you think about that?
Well, it's two things. You have the federal system and the state system. I did federal work and state. On the federal side, they have the federal sentencing guidelines. They have all those issues. And a lot has changed because it was a lot worse. And so when you would have one type of crime, it would give you a guideline enhancement. Now those crimes won't give you that guideline enhancement.
So what is a guideline enhancement?
So a guideline enhancement is, say you have a prior conviction for possession of intent to distribute, and it was cocaine. It was crack.
Okay.
So it used to be that because it was crack cocaine, a small amount of crack cocaine, that would give you an enhancement, that would give you more jail time. And then eventually, but a person, say, had cocaine, they wouldn't get the same amount because they wouldn't get that enhancement. So that's where you see a lot of the changes. Now you do have enhancements on the federal side with fentanyl, which, fentanyl is such a dangerous drug, it kills you. And so it's a lot different. But on the state side, that's where prosecutors really matter. Because a prosecutor, you can come and say, okay, this is this person's second conviction. They had crack cocaine and now they got regular cocaine. What are we going to do? And so that's when the prosecutors on the state side have a little more flexibility, because if it's their third felony drug case, they're looking at it being a third-time offender. It's 25 without the possibility of parole. So as a prosecutor, do you want to call 25 without the possibility of parole? Say the first time you sold 2 pieces of crack cocaine at 18, then at 20 you sold 20 pieces of crack cocaine, and then at 30 you sold 45 pieces of crack cocaine. Technically, that could get you 25 years without the possibility of parole. Is that fair? I don't find that fair. You have to look to see what you've done. Now, you done sold 1 kilo. Now you done moved to 15 kilos. And by the time you're 30, you're moving 100 kilos. Well, yeah, bro. Now we got to talk a little differently when we have them conversations. And so, as a prosecutor, I get to make those decisions on how we're going to handle those situations and hold those people accountable.
Yeah.
So quick question, just a shot out in the dark. As a prosecutor, have you ever felt that the charges were different towards whites versus blacks? Younger blacks, younger whites, older, just whatever. Has it ever been in your eyes? Because I've always wanted to know this taboo of what it is that blacks get more time than whites.
Well, look, I think as a prosecutor, I have control over that. So if I was to see that, then no, I'm not going to let that happen. You know, I've had to recently make some calls on some cases that have been very difficult, where I would see the police may have done something wrong to violate a person's constitutional rights. Do we go ahead and proceed? Maybe the defense attorney isn't going to call that out, but as a prosecutor, I think I have an ethical duty to stop that. And that's where I think my background experience really comes into place, because as a defense attorney, I was calling it out. It's so important that people believe that the system treats everybody fair, no matter who you are. I've tried to do that. Am I perfect? Is our office perfect? No, things gonna fall through the cracks. But when it comes to me and you bring that to me, I'm willing to sit, I'm willing to look, to listen, to understand what could we do to fix this, because I am sensitive to that. I think one of the things people forget, I was a defense attorney for 20 years. So I was in the trenches making those arguments. I saw what happened. I mean, I tell people, I think we're having a conversation today, on the federal side, when it was George Bush was the president, you had drugs, you was getting 10 years off the break. Obama came in, President Obama came in, it was 5 years. Trump then came in, jumped back to 10. You know, Biden came back, you could get down to 5. And so you can see, what is that doing? And, you know, is that fair? But also, you know, what I do have to say, then you also had the First Step Act, and that was on the federal side, where now instead of doing 80% of your time, you do 60% of your time. So you can see how the criminal justice system has tried to be a little more fair. But once again, it's the people who are at the head of the table, the prosecutors, the U.S. attorneys. Those individuals are the ones that have the ability to make the decisions. Just because the law is there, the count is there, will that prosecutor call that particular count that will give that enhancement? Those are things that people don't always understand.
So look, to kind of piggyback off what you were just talking about, right? And it's kind of a pivot, but politically, you mentioned, when it was from the change from Obama to Trump to Biden, in terms of sentencing, right? Do you think there's a disconnect between, because I think a lot of us on the ground level in the black community, we don't understand that. Right. We think a lot of times the media will create this picture that there's no difference between what Joe Biden or what Obama is doing versus what Trump's doing in terms of sentencing mandates, right? And why do you think that disconnect exists? Because I think, just like you said, I think there are some differences, and they tend to be more favorable toward, better guidelines when you got a Democrat in office, frankly.
No, on the federal side, it's definitely true. Even though I must tell you, when you look at policies, the president and DOJ, Department of Justice, are going to have policies. But remember, this is the crazy part that people don't realize. Trump was the president that changed the law in terms of going from 80% to 60%. But also remember, at that time, Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, his father went to federal prison and realized how those laws affected him. Mm-hmm. And once they affected his father, then there was change. Right. And what you also understand is that when the criminal process hits you or your loved one or your family members, then all of a sudden it hits differently and you're going to change.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the drugs, that's why I think with fentanyl, most people will say, well, I don't deal with fentanyl, I don't touch fentanyl, so therefore we can give the enhancement. And then fentanyl is a dangerous drug that's killing people, so people are looking differently at fentanyl because also people are saying, most people not trying to touch fentanyl, be around fentanyl. So I think when you look at it, we seem to make the same mistakes over and over again, but I can see where the system has gotten somewhat better. But I think once again, one, you got to really have a good lawyer who's going to fight for you. And number two, you got to have a prosecutor or a U.S. attorney who's going to be fair as well.
Yeah. So just to pivot quickly, man, number one, we appreciate you taking the time to sit out here and talk with us. I read recently that your 3 role models were your mother, your father, and the great Thurgood Marshall, right? I mean, the legendary Baltimore's own Thurgood Marshall. Is there one thing, if you could, name one thing from each of those individually that you walk with today in terms of something they may have instilled in you personally and professionally, what would that be?
Oh, well, my mom, she was a fighter. My mom was no joke. So I'll probably say I'm a fighter, at least they tell me I am. And I got that from her. My dad really is probably the nicest, most humble. He's just a great guy. And I try to take and treat people the way he wants to be treated. He calls it the golden rule, treat people how you want to be treated. Yeah. So I try to take that from my father. And Thurgood Marshall, I've never been afraid to go into court no matter where I was. So, I remember one time I was out in Western Maryland, and I had a client, and there was no black lawyers there. And so this white guy was talking to me, and he was like, yeah, this system's messed up, it's rigged, we got to stick together. And he keeps talking to me. I'm like, okay. And then he was like, so what they charge you with? Now I got on a suit and tie, the whole nine, right? And so I look at him, I said, excuse me? I said, no, I'm the lawyer. And he was, oh, I'm sorry. And
were you sitting next to him?
we were just sitting right there, getting ready to go in. He just started talking. And so what it was with Thurgood Marshall, he showed you that you can fight anywhere. And it didn't matter the color of my skin because it was my mentality. I had a case with my old boss, went to U.S. Supreme Court. I've done cases, cartel case in L.A. I've argued appellate issues in the Fifth Circuit down in New Orleans. So I ain't never been scared to go anywhere. Federal court, I was in federal court fighting left and right. The federal judge was like, Mr. Bates, I need you to approach. And we approached, he said, I need you to be on a CJ panel. A CJA panel is when the court gives you cases. Well, I didn't really want that, but when a federal judge picks you to do that job, then you do it. And I think I was so blessed that I was able to reach clients other people couldn't. So next thing I knew, he kept sending me all these cases. So I was blessed to get the money to get the cases, but it wasn't what I normally would have charged, but it still was blessed to be able to do the work. And so for me, within the law, and look, I learned in college that you got to work twice as hard to be twice as good to get any acknowledgement.
Right.
And Thurgood Marshall showed me that's what I needed to do.
Yeah. Love it.
All right, we're going to switch the pitch up a little bit, man, because at Beats, Bars, and Bourbon, we talk about hip-hop and bourbon, man. Yes. So we do something called barrel picks, right? A barrel pick is when you go in, and we did a barrel pick a little while ago, where we go into a distiller, we select a barrel that they have, and it's our barrel, right? So what we call a barrel pick is a question that we only ask one guest, right? So this is a one-of-one. This is a one-of-one set of questions. You ain't gonna hear these nowhere else. So, all right, so we're gonna go. Most talented defense attorney, Billy Murphy or Kenny Ravenel? Come on. Who you got?
Ken Ravenel is my boss. He taught me a lot.
We already know where you going with this then.
So, without a doubt, I'm going to have to say Ken Ravenel. What people don't know about Ken Ravenel, back then, we had cell phones. At 6 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning, when I said, we had this little flip cell phone back then, man, every morning I would see that phone would ring with Ken's name on it. Man, my heart would sink because he had more work for me. When I was sleeping, he was working. He was the most prepared lawyer I'd ever seen, I'd ever met. and he would get into those roles, and he would find a way to win in ways I'd never seen before. So for me, and he also had a way with juries. And so for me, having sat there and learned a great deal about the law and learning from him, I gotta say Ken Ravenel. Now I respect Billy, but Ken's my guy.
I was about to say shout out Billy, shout out Kent.
Yes.
Yeah, they both amazing, both amazing.
Yes.
All right, we're gonna take it to music though. Jay-Z or Nas?
Jay-Z all day, every day. I mean, the greatest
Jay?
album, Reasonable Doubt. What can I say? I love Jay-Z in the sense that when him and Nas was battling, I still think he won. You can't tell me he didn't win.
Delusional.
Yes, all day, every day.
Delusional.
You know what? You can say what you want to say, but when it came to Jay-Z, everything he touched. This is crazy. One of my favorite songs was that Jay-Z ever did, a collaboration, was with Eminem. Renegade.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yo, I love that song. And so
Find out that Mr. Bates is from Marcy.
Now you were two of the biggest
Nas
fans. So
But I got love for Jay-Z. And shout out Stokey Carmichael. He a big Jay-Z guy. We had the same conversation. Yeah. He obviously said Jay-Z too. Now I know why there's a thing. You know what I mean? Like, I get it now. I get it now.
And then last one. We're going to go football because we know you're a Ravens guy, right?
all day, every day.
All right, so Lamar Jackson or Michael Vick? Who you got?
Come on.
Who you got?
See, that's an unfair question. I'm gonna tell you why. So my father was in the military. We lived everywhere. So I grew up in Hampton, Virginia. So I watched Michael Vick and everything. So before there was a Lamar, there had to be a Michael Vick. And I will just caveat me being a lawyer, saying that I'm going to say both, because you didn't say I couldn't say both, but I'm going to say both because the first was the alpha, who was Michael Vick, and now we see the omega, who is Lamar. Lamar's just,
I love it.
He's taking Michael Vick to another level.
So in order for Lamar to run, Michael Vick had to walk.
Yeah, exactly. All day, every day.
I feel it.
Because you'd have never, ever had the opportunity to have a Lamar if it wasn't Michael Vick. Because you got to remember, the first time you saw Michael Vick flick that ball 60 yards in the air on a rope, you was like, good God.
Yeah.
Remember that national championship, and Peter Warwick was the man for Florida State. And then Michael Vick.
Don't get him started.
He was just, woo. So, I mean, that's why I say for me, look, I got nothing but love for Lamar. But yeah, I gotta go ahead and Vic special.
Okay. But look, we got a little inside story. Bubba Chuck.
Oh, all day, all night. So growing up in Hampton, there was a kid, we called him Bubba Chuck. The world ended up knowing him as Allen Iverson. He was named Bubba because he had two uncles named Bubba and one named Chuck. He was literally the greatest athlete I've ever seen. Now, he went to my old high school, and I would say the things he was able to do on that football field. So we were playing the championship, and they're in the middle of the day, in the daytime, and then they had a basketball game at night. Bubba Chuck, he intercepted a pass for a touchdown championship. He threw for a touchdown, he ran for a touchdown, returned a punt for a touchdown, and we won. Then he hurried up, got in the car, didn't catch the bus, got in the car, drove back to Hampton, because I think we played in Richmond, drove back to Hampton, and we drove to Hampton, dropped 40 in the basketball game a couple hours later. So when you look at he was just on a whole nother level. And now, look, he ended up going, getting arrested, going to jail.
Right.
And then John Thompson saved him at Georgetown. But what he was able to do on the football field was amazing as well.
Yeah. I love it. You got something, Bull?
I don't know how much time we got, right? But I got a special for you. Okay. Alien comes down from outer space. He's in front of you. He speaks in his gibberish, but you understand. You understand what he's saying? And he says, take me to your dopest leader. The dopest leader being is someone or some music that can introduce that alien to hip hop. Who is the dopest leader?
This is going to probably blow y'all away.
Come on.
I'm going to say KRS-One.
Oh, man.
And you know what? He's going to educate him in a way that no one else can.
Yeah.
And he's going to get him moving in a way that no one else can.
You got a song
And
for us?
Oh man, I ain't gonna. No, bro, KRS-One. You know, I mean, he's just the type of dude who, when he educates, he talks to you, you're gonna understand. He's gonna hit your mind in a way that's gonna make you think. And so when you're thinking about KRS-One, that's why I say you want someone who's gonna educate who we are to that person, and is gonna connect with them in a way and get them to move.
Yeah, yeah. Was he an inspiration for you coming up? Like, I mean, getting into your profession, were there any hip hop artists in particular that inspired you?
You throw the headphones on, zone.
Public Enemy.
Let me get in my bag and get this money and do my work.
Like the theme music to your lifestyle right now, your profession.
It might be Earth, Wind and Fire.
It might be.
Nah, I would.
I got Frankie Beverly amazed on this one.
No, you know, it's funny because remember, my parents back when I was growing up, they had the stereo, and they would have the little house party, and they'd have the red light, and they'd open up the little bar, and they'd have the little friends over. And you're right, they'd play some Earth, Wind and Fire, some Frankie Beverly. I mean, that's just kind of what they did. You know, for me, to be honest, I was more TV and sports dude. I love sports. From the coming up, it was sports for me. And so with me, I liked music a lot, but sports was really for me. That was my thing.
Okay.
We talk about sports. I could tell you one of the things that's funny. I saw a meme that represented me. Come the wintertime, I think I'm an NFL GM because, you know, I'm in 4 or 5 fantasy football leagues. So you can't tell me I don't know nothing about that. Baseball, football, we got to have a basketball draft. So we talk about sports all day as well. But, you know, with me, a lot of it had to do with growing up in the house. You know, we had hip-hop, but it didn't hit the same down there at the time period as Hampton, Virginia.
Gotcha.
You know, you also got to understand during that time period, they didn't have a lot of black radio stations. And black radio stations where you would hear hip-hop. And so you would listen to quote-unquote, their mainstream music. I wasn't trying to listen to that. And so for me, that's why, you know, it really wasn't until, you remember, BET would come on. Yes. And when you see BET, you sit there and that's when you look into everything. Back then you had like Michael Jackson, you had Prince. So it was a little different during that time period and everything. And so for me, you know, I liked Michael Jackson, but Prince was my dude. You know, and when you look at things like that, you know, he said international lover. When he say international lover, boy, you couldn't tell me nothing.
Hey, look, we're going to get you out of here. We know you got to roll, man. It's been a pleasure. We got an audience, though, man. We Beats, Bars, and Bourbon got an audience tonight, man. It's a beautiful thing. Everybody looking lovely out here, man. Anybody in the audience got any questions? I know we itching a little bit. All right, we gonna go to Zeke, then we gonna go. I go to Pee Wee first, then we go to Zeke. Yeah, we do it that way.
How you doing, Mr. Bates?
Good, you, my brother.
I just want to start off by saying doing an excellent job. I appreciate the job that you're doing. The murder rate is at an all-time low, and I attribute a lot of that to your office, the police, especially some of the community leaders that's on the ground as well. But I had something else to ask you. I done heard you say previously that you was in favor of mandatory minimums and guns, and I think I heard you say 5 years. And I was a person that got caught up in that 100-to-1 crack law, first-time drug offender. I got 20 years. I wound up getting out early, doing 13 under that Obama and Eric Holder administration. So I'm definitely not with the mandatory minimums. I wanted to see if you really agree with the mandatory minimums, and if so, why? And I also wanted to ask you, do you see a pathway for ex-felons to actually get their gun rights back if they was to prove that they out in the community doing things the right way, helping the community? Because I help the community. I'm out in the community all the time, community leader. And it's still Baltimore, and it's actually dangerous out here in a lot of situations. Just want to know if you see a pathway for ex-felons to actually get gun rights back.
Okay. Well, first of all, you know, I want to say the fact that you changed your life and you back here, congratulations, you know. Now, in reference to the mandatory minimum, I do believe in mandatory minimums at some times, not first-time offenders. One of the things that we've done is when I came into office, we realized they were looking at the research, there was 5,000 to 6,000 repeat violent offenders. Not first-time offenders. These are the people that had 1 or 2 or 3 gun convictions. These are people that done robberies. These are people that done attempt murders. These are people that are doing the violent crime. So under the law, if those individuals have a gun, you can go ahead and give them 5 years without the possibility of parole. One of the things I also realized was when you look at the research and the data, a person who receives about 3.5, 4 years, 5 years without the possibility of parole on the state side is about 4 years. Once you remove that individual from the community for 4 years, they, one, have the opportunity to think about what they're missing. Number two, it's not forever. And number three, you have the opportunity to allow the community to begin to heal. But we also realize out of that 5,000 to 6,000 violent repeat offenders, 40% of them were the individuals that are being murdered. And so we wanted to make sure that we also did something to remove them, to also sort of protect them from that violence in the street. And the others were also, not every single one, I think it was about 35, number 40%, those are trigger pullers that were killing those individuals. So for me, that's the important thing, to remove them from off the street, because they're showing a propensity for violence and no one sat them down. Now that they're sat down, what do? I'm a big believer, and we're now working with Secretary Scruggs and trying to go ahead and do things to get into the prisons, to talk to them, to give these individuals, a lot of them are brothers, to give them the opportunity to change their life. And it's not a job, but a career. For instance, you need to be able to read and write, and you have your GED. A lot of them don't have their GED. Now, you're doing, serious time, you eventually realize, well, let me see what my case is about, so you can go to the law library. But if you can't read, then you're dependent on somebody else. Giving them that opportunity to get their GED, giving that opportunity to have a real career, whether it's an HVAC or to get their CDL licenses so they can drive. That to me is very, very important, where I do believe you're being held accountable. It's not forever. Now, I don't want to see a minimum mandatory first-time drug offense, you get 20 years. I don't agree with all of that. Now, you got to also look at the weight. First time, but you the main plug, and you walking around 250 kilos, yeah, the weight's going to get you right now, bro. Ain't nothing I can do about that one. You've been doing dirt for a while, and they finally caught up with you. That's what that is. So I get that one. But I also look at it from, do I think people should, look, I believe you should have your gun rights back, but I think there should be a certain amount of time. And I think you see that more and more. But I also have to understand what the alleged crime, or what the crime was that individual was found guilty of. There's a difference between a person that was selling drugs and a person that was robbing and shooting and killing people. I don't believe that person should have their gun rights back, because they've shown a propensity for violence. But also, if you're sitting up there with a gun, and you don't say you don't even have a gun, but now you have a prior felony, say for selling weed. Let's say you sold weed back in the day and you have a felony. I don't necessarily think that felony should bar you from being able to get your gun rights back. But it's a lot deeper and everything when you look at that. I remember as a defense attorney, I fought for a person that received a probation before judgment to see could they get their gun rights back. And so when you get into constitutionality and all those issues, I think there's a couple cases that have come out that have cited and kind of saying that you should be able to try to get those gun rights back. I think when the legislature has to look at that, what does it look like 15 years, say 15 years from the date of the conviction? I think maybe then you can begin to look, because you also realize individuals, as they get older, they change their life, and they're aging out of that criminal behavior. So what's it look like for a brother who's 55 years of age, but they got in trouble in their 20s, haven't been in trouble since 22, and now you're looking at them, so much later in life, should this individual be able to get that? And to me, that should be something, maybe we look at it from a standpoint, they petition the governor's office, and the same way they look at pardons is maybe they can sit down and look at allowing individuals to have their gun rights restored.
That's dope. And we're gonna go to Brother Zeke, man. Brother made it happen tonight. Appreciate you, man. The setup is dope. And owner of Bar Vegan, obviously.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Eat clean, drink dirty. Yes, sir. The new slogan. Thank you for coming here. Thank you, Bourbon Boys, for hosting it at Bar V 2.0. Thank you, Ivan Bates, for coming and hosting this event as well here. My question is, in a position of leadership, especially dealing with the law as a black man, there's kind of this duality that I'm sure is a challenge of being black and an American. I always think back, my family's from New York, so I remember when Giuliani, not that I'm condoning any of his policies, but I remember my cousin was, beat up by the police for hopping a turnstile, $1.25 violation. But at the same time, it was the first time my mother took the subway in 30 years. So it's kind of like, and then and living in Baltimore, raising a family, I remember sending my kids to the area school, and when they started to bus kids in, the school started to change, so then we had to pay for private school. So now it's this happy to see opportunity for my people, but personally, this has changed the dynamic of my area school. Now we have to do private school. So it's being, black and in leadership, there's these moments. I'm interested to know, what are your check-ins? Like, how do you say, you said a good one earlier where you focus on the victim, but sometimes the victims are not as obvious, like you said, with drug crimes. How do you do your check-in between being a leader for people in general, all people of the city, and in addition, being a black man? Like, how do you do that balance for yourself between enforcing the law and being culturally sensitive?
That's an interesting question, because you do struggle with that. I think one of the things that helped me, first of all, I went to going to Howard University helped me tremendously, because it allowed me to understand who I was as a black man, and how, I like to say, how you have to live as you climb. But I also have to look at the process of life. And the process of life takes you through various points in your life. Remember, we had Freddie Gray. Well, one of the things I did, I represented a police officer in Freddie Gray. Boy, you talk about getting smoke from my friends and my family, my people. They'd call me every name, Uncle Tom, sellout, coon, you name it. But the thing that let me understand this was that I felt like I represented a black woman, because I represented Sergeant Alicia White, who needed to be protected just like anybody else in the criminal justice system. What people also didn't understand, the same time I was representing her, I was going to jail, realizing there was a group of corrupt cops, Gun Trace Task Force, one in particular, Wayne Jenkins, and I was telling brothers who are locked up, hey, I'll take your case half price every time I saw Wayne Jenkins' name on a piece of paper. And what I learned from representing Sergeant Alicia White, it allowed me to put together the information to turn over to the feds so that they could prosecute Wayne Jenkins. And so for me, number one, I gotta keep God first. I'm a deep, deep believer that the Lord has already orchestrated my path. It is there. The doors that open, when it's time, they open. But I also am a big believer, like my father told me, you treat people like you want to be treated. And I try to bring as much integrity to this process as possible. I don't get along with everybody, but I try to treat everybody the way that I'd want to be treated. At the end of the day, I also recognize I got, little girl, some 9-year-old little girl who looks up at me, and I don't want to disappoint her. I try to do everything so one day she doesn't see I'm a footnote in history of done something negative and wrong. But I want to do something to make her proud, but also I do recognize I want to make my people proud, black people proud, because I think I have a duty as well. I sit down, I look at Barack Obama, and to me, he's the gold standard, because the way in which he conducted himself. Some days, boy, you be fired up, and thank God I ain't got a mic on me all the time, because y'all be shocked some things I say. But what I would say is that I have a duty, because when I step out there, I represent the people of Baltimore City, and I feel like by representing them, I want to give them hope. I fought really hard for this position, and I can't blow it, because we get judged differently. And I have to do the best I can. I have to do a good job, and I have to give 100%. And knowing that, I have to make hard decisions. And not all decisions black people are going to be happy with, and I get that. But I want them to at least understand that I took into the equation the law, first of all. And understanding that, not everybody understands some of the decisions I made. I may not have made them, that same decision, but for the law. But my heart was in the right place. So you have to balance that, but at the end of the day, I took an oath to do the right thing, which was follow the law. And the reason I brought Freddie Gray up is because there will probably be, and I hope to God never be, a situation where I felt more ostracized as a black man as I was with Freddie Gray. But there will also never be another time in my life where I've received more love from the black community than I have doing this job. When I go out, they thank me time and time again because I feel I've given them hope. I couldn't do that if I did not go through the Freddie Gray process.
Yeah.
You have to be, as a leader, you can't be afraid to stand alone long as you're standing on the truth that you can see and articulate in a way, in a manner that people know it's pure. And also, as long as you're doing, I feel like you following God, you're doing what you're supposed to from that point of view, them doors going to open for you. And you're not standing alone, you stand with God.
Yeah. That's well said. Hey, you had a
one
question?
Appreciate it, Tony Taylor. I love the fact that you said you used to be a basketball coach. I'm a basketball coach, real estate developer, so here in the city. But grew up in D.C., went to Morgan, and came back to the city about 3 years ago. I see this revolving door with kids, and we talked about youth earlier. One of the things where I feel like Maryland and most of the states seem like they got away from was really sending kids to boot camps. A lot of the parents are not giving them that love no more, but do we see an opportunity for that where it's not this revolving door, a kid gets in on Saturday, they out on Monday, released back in the community without some real tough love? That's something that I got when I grew up that saved my life. And where do you stand on that?
Well, I mean, I definitely believe in tough love because I love my mom and dad. Like I said, my mom was no joke. So let's just know there was a lot of tough love over here, boy. And my dad was a strong disciplinarian. So I do believe in tough love. One of the things, though, you do find out, you do have a lot, unfortunately, of elected leaders that want to not give the tough love because they want to spare the rod. And I get that. I do get it. But the problem that we have in the state of Maryland is we do not have the juvenile facilities in place for these young people to go to, where you did have a boot camp. When I first took office in January 2023, you had programs that were 9 months for juveniles. Now, if you look at it now, they got programs that are only 2 months for juveniles. Wow. So think about it. From my standpoint, I got a 15-year-old kid who pulls out a gun, who's afraid, but he shoots at a kid. He misses, thank God. 15-year-old kid ain't never been in trouble. So let's say this happens in January, the case gets kicked around, 15-year-old kid hasn't been going to school, they're sitting over there in the jail, and now they're in school. They're doing so well, they've taken their reading and education from a 4th grade level to, say, an 8th grade level. They're doing really well. We agree with the Public Defender's Office and DJS to say, okay, we're going to get this kid a chance, we're going to send him to the juvenile section. So we send him to the juveniles. Now this kid, because they've told us there's a program, now we find out there's no program for this kid. This kid now, 2 months, he's in his program, he's in and out, he's back in that community. Now, one, the kid he shot at probably got a crew and they looking for him, because now it's been only 8 months since he shot at him. And number two, what did this young person learn? How were they held accountable? Well, yeah, you can say they were held accountable because they were in jail for 6 months. Okay. But what was the lesson in terms of their education, in terms of what's going on with them? Because what we're also finding out is these young kids, sometimes we send them to juvenile session, to juvenile court, they are not going to school sometimes. And so are we really failing our children? Because now they don't go to school, they don't have a GED, they're out there in the streets. Now what happens? An older kid's going to take them, is going to have them hustling for him and doing other things for him. And before you know it, this poor kid who's 17 now is going to they shoot at someone again. Now this time, we're not sending you back to juvenile court. We keeping you as an adult. And the other thing these kids don't realize, we're going to find it on camera and someone going to tell on you because that's just what's going on. And then, unfortunately, we're going to look to see, okay, you have a prior conviction for attempt murder as a juvenile. Now there's a new attempt murder as an adult. We looking for 20, 25 years, unfortunately. And, I wish we had more programs for the children. I've spoken to the governor more. His team has said they want to do that. There's a new Secretary Tolentino in charge of DJS. It just takes time to do that. We have to, I personally feel, allow the governor and allow that administration the time to rebuild the juvenile system that was decimated, and so that our children can really get the services that they need.
I just had one final question. We spoke earlier about community walks and the role you play in terms of going into these communities and talking with folks, and how you mentioned that we're invited is when we come out. We don't want to kind of push ourselves onto any particular community. How can folks reach out to you in your office if they're interested in a community walks kind of situation?
Well, you're right. I wanted to give a little plug. Today we had an opportunity to do a community walk. We were invited by the Gordons Falls Parkway, the individuals from that community. And one of the reasons we do enjoy community walks is because we get to hear from the people. We also realize a lot of elected officials just talk to each other. They're not talking to the people. When you go out in the community, you find out really what's going on in the people. You find out we walked around. Well, it was a big area, so we drove part of it. But they showed us this house over here has A, B, C, and D happening. This corner over here, Miss Johnson lives across the street, and she can't even walk out her house because these boys up here are selling drugs. That's real life. And so for us, it's important that the community invite us. It's no different than your house. When you invite me to your house, I can come, but I'm not just going to show up at your house to tell you what's wrong. I'm going to wait till you invite me. And to get us, it's pretty easy. It's just email me, SA, that's Sam Alpha, SA, at stattorney.org. And when you email me, my team will go ahead, they'll get it, they'll look at the information. We have to meet tonight, Hassan Giordano. He's the head of our Community Affairs Outreach Division, and they're the ones who are out there doing the work. We have people, and they do a phenomenal job knocking on doors, giving information. We have a program, the Learn Center, where we're doing a Learn Tour. We go out in the communities, and we find out what are your issues so we can understand what type of legislation you would like to have passed. And so to me, when you're an elected official, I work for the people pay my salary, so I need to do as much as I can to be of the people and with the people.
Yeah, we love that, man. Look, we're gonna let you get out of here, man. But the thing that I'm left with is accountability and love, tough love. And that I think that goes for anybody. Like I raise a kid, you know what I mean? And that's the formula that I use with my daughter. Like accountability with tough love at the same time, man. Thanks for chopping it up with us, brother. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
For sure.